Good afternoon, everybody. Want to take a couple minutes and just kind of chat with you for a second regarding uh, module number 4, where you're looking at individual health behavior theories. There's a lot of information in here. Of course, you've got some slides to take a look at a lot that go along with your reading. There are some other things that you can look at here with some articles, and we would like you to take a look at the video, because I already see that for some of you the APA style of formatting, citation, reference is a little bit of a challenge and a little bit something that's different for you. So Drs. Doucette and Anderson did a session for us for our on-ground students a while back, and so if you'll go to that link, take a look at what they've got to offer. I think that could be helpful for you. And you'll struggle with this a little bit until you get the handle of it, and then it'll be okay. So let's briefly, if we can take a look at, you can kind of take a look at here, and really, of course, I'm not going to read all these for you or discuss these, but if we can talk a little bit about the solution paper guidelines, and then we'll talk just a little bit about the health belief model and the theory of planned behavior. So you can see, let me see if I can move this up some. You can see that, of course, your first installment was due this past Friday. Your statement of problem, your first paragraph, and then, of course, we were looking for statistical data, definitions, and comparisons. This is due on the 14th, or it was due on the 14th. What you'll be working on now, and here's what I would suggest. You don't really need to wait for me to get that feedback to you, although I'm going to get that back to you as quickly as possible. Don't wait for the feedback, because you could already be thinking about what kind of theoretical approach that you would like to explore to address this issue. And it may be one theory, it may be multiple theories, but this installment 2, this solution paper part 2, what you'll do is, of course, choose a theory. We want you to review it, research on how it has been applied to the issue at hand from other people, or for some of you, you're going to say, well, it's not ever been covered in this particular topic that I'm interested in. Well, that's okay too. But you would want to see how this theory is used in a similar way, maybe for a different population, maybe for a different health occurrence, a health event occurrence. And you can use more than one theory. But what you're really going to be doing this second installment, you're going to introduce us to the theory or theories. You're going to tell us the basics about that. So in your own words, don't rely heavily on quotes for this, but tell us in your own words the basics about this theory. Give us some examples through research of how it's been used in the past. And of course, you're going to do this with the paper guidelines. And for some of you, I know that's a bit of a challenge, but what we're trying to do is help you to be succinct in your writing, because for those of you who go on to do grant writing or you're submitting for publications, paper guidelines and limit guidelines are hard, fast, and so we want to help you there. This second installment is due by the 28th. And again, when you make submissions, and if you decide that you wanted to redo something and the paper is not quite due yet, you can submit multiple times. And I would encourage that. You can do that. And then, of course, on installment 3, what you're going to do, you identified a population beforehand, but now what you're going to do is you're going to further define your priority population. So maybe you were talking about a problem health-wise on a state or national level. Well, I'm hoping that maybe your intervention is going to be more manageable. So maybe you want to bring that down to a specific population, say a specific region or a specific town or a specific area that you want to take a look at. Because if it's too broad, it's not really manageable, and really, we could all say that we want to tackle obesity across the United States. Well, that's a pretty big order. But if you bring it down to, say, maybe people within a particular town or a particular region, I think it's more manageable. And then what you'll do in this third installment, identifying your priority population, recommend an intervention based on the theory or constructs. And again, you're going to not just say, here's the theory that I think that this goes along with. Show us how it works. And assume that the reader, even though I know what you're talking about, assume that the reader knows nothing, because you need to make those connections for us. On this third installment, you're going to include what we call a logic model, and we'll briefly talk about that here. And that's going to be due July 12th. And then, of course, your installment 1, 2, and 3, you're going to get feedback from all of that. And then from that, you'll craft your final paper. And that's going to be due July 22nd. So I hope that's helpful. And of course, if you've got questions, let me know. So the statement of the problem, you've already submitted this, but there's some examples listed here. Logic models. You can take a look in your textbook on page 176. There's a figure there, which is not bad. And then there's also some resources on the detail side as well, too, that you can go ahead and take a look there. And for your third installment, we do want you to use the template that was provided. Don't craft your own. Number one, it's just making more work for yourself. And number two, we want these to kind of be uniform. So play around with that. You can do that. In your logic models, of course, all you're doing is telling us in a nutshell, through visualization, we're looking at the scope of your intervention and what you want to do. Because here, in truthfulness, you can have a proposal, and of course, instructors are going to read it and other people within the field, but a lot of times, especially for funding agencies or people who are not intimately acquainted with the intervention or the study population, they're not going to read through your paper. And so this logic model gives them a brief, something they can scan over, something they can take a look at and see, yeah, okay, this makes sense. This is logical. Called a logic model. It gives a big picture. For your logic models, of course, you want to make sure that you have your inputs, your outputs, and your outcomes. And so there's even an example of the logic model used out there, and you can kind of go by that. And so your inputs are going to be your resources that you're going to be using. And the reason why we're talking about this right now is because when you're thinking about your intervention, your theory, all of these things, it's kind of good to kind of keep this all together, because it'll help you do what you need to do. So, for example, resources could be human resources. It could be partnerships, other groups that you're working with. It could be equipment, supplies, materials, community resources. You could even list the College of Public Health if you're working with that. Some of you are going to be working with other agencies, other health departments, other clinics or doctors or things like that. So you just want to be very specific about what are your resources that you're going to be using. Your outputs are going to be your activities. So out of these resources, what kind of activities are you going to have that pertain to your intervention? What are your products? Are you coming up with a product? Are you coming up with a service? Are you coming up with some type of infrastructure that is helping to support what you're wanting to do? And then lastly, your outcomes. What are the results or the effects that you are expecting to see? With that, there will be short-term, mid-term, long-term, and all of you should think about that in a very detailed kind of way. So your short-term is anywhere from 6 months to a year. Your mid is between 1 and 3 years, and then long-term is going to be longer than that. So what do you want to see happening? And one of the things also to consider for that logic model there is, of course, you're going to be doing, part of this will be an evaluation. How do you know if you're actually meeting those short-term, mid-term, and long-term outcomes? So think about the kind of data sources that you need to collect and the data that you'll have to do so that you can be able to say, here's our intervention, here's what we accomplished, and here's our documentation to kind of show that this is what happened. And you can see here, this is another way to look at it. What are you investing? What actually did you do? And then what are the results? And even another example from an older textbook there. So there's a lot to do this particular module and the next, because it's all done within the same week. And this is also one of the reasons why I wanted to push for extending the time that we spend on some of this stuff, because it's a lot to think about, and I certainly understand that. Health belief model, that's where we'll kind of start out with. Of course, the textbook and everything talks about the different types of ecological perspectives, which is a good thing to keep in mind, and what all comes from that. Other types of theories, and again, you all may come up with some theories that you want to use for your interventions that we're not discussing within the textbook or within the lecture slides, and that's perfectly fine. But I hope that you'll help me, convince me, and make your case there. So really, health belief model, if you don't know anything about this is one of the most simple, and it's one of the most straightforward, and honestly, it's one that most people consider using because of the simplicity. And so it was developed in the 1950s. You can see this here, and really what they were trying to find out is that it all revolved around tuberculosis screenings. And so they were giving screenings because this is a serious disease, but they were offering screenings, but nobody came. And so they didn't quite understand that here we're offering a service, here's a deadly disease that we're trying to prevent or screen you for. So why aren't people coming? What's motivating people to either come or not to come? And so, and what they found out is that they came if they thought they were at risk, or if they were susceptible, or if they thought the screening was beneficial. So there's the nutshell right there. So what you have are your constructs here, and these are simple, pretty straightforward. So what is a person's perceived susceptibility? Do they have the perception of getting this perception, do they feel susceptible? If they don't, then they're not going to think anything about it. So maybe a way to kind of look at this is, how do we help people in that susceptibility area? Or if they come down with a particular health condition, what's the perception of the seriousness or the risk of the condition? So if they don't see it as a risk, if they don't see it as being severe, then there may be an issue there. What are some of the perceived benefits if somebody comes to take part of it in an intervention? What are they getting out of it? What's the efficacy there that they're seeing? And then what could you find out for cues to action? Like, what would you need to place, or what could you craft or frame that so you would have strategies so that people could be ready to do these things? And then lastly, this self-efficacy is one that you'll see over and over and over again, because it tends to play a lot in almost all other types of theoretical models that we look at. Is how confident do people that they can do what they need to do? Does it seem out of reach? Does it seem like it's something that's achievable for them? Can they get success out of that? And so these are the constructs that you would want to take a look at here for health belief model. And then you see some information here, and this is just another way to kind of frame this for you so you can look at this. And it's one of the most widely used and the broadest of health theories. It's a value expectancy theory where behavior is generally viewed to be the subjective value of the outcome, the subjective probability or expectation that an action will achieve the outcome that they're looking for. And these are all good things. And you can, again, we've already said this, if people believe that they're susceptible, if they believe that the consequences of the condition are severe, if they believe that if they take some type of action that it's beneficial for them, if they kind of perceive that the barriers to taking this action are low, and the benefits are easy, if you can develop some cues or triggers, and can people kind of think that, okay, I can kind of do this and I can produce the outcome? It all seems kind of perfect, doesn't it? Well, there are some critiques that are out there, and because this deals with individual decisions, and so you're basically saying that if the person decides to do this, is that they're going to be successful, but it doesn't account for other factors as well as we know, such as social and environmental factors. Sometimes there are things bigger than us, and it assumes that the decisions that we make are based upon rational processes. We're humans, right? We would like to think that we're rational, but oftentimes we're not, and so that may be something we need to consider. And it also says that everyone has equal access to information so that they can make those decisions. And that's not taking into account people's context and contextual living experiences. So I hope that this is helpful. You'll enjoy this. Thank you.